Hello. It is August 27th, 2025, 8:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to go over what happened in the stock market today. And just to briefly talk about some of the price action that we saw today and what also happened after NVDA reported their earnings after hours. So, looking at SPY, which I like to look at, but I also like to look at the US 500 futures on TradingView because it continuously tracks the futures price action overnight and doesn't have any of the breaks in between, perhaps maybe just after market close for a couple of minutes. But looking at SPY, today SPY made a new high. And also SPX made a new high, or you could say US 500. But SPX made a new high. So both of these made a new high. The only indices that didn't make a new high today was the QQQs. So the price action today looked really bad, meaning the bears nor the bulls won today. And sure, today SPY made a new high, but it was a very wicky price action throughout the day. So not a lot of people could have traded this. And I believe a lot of the option contracts today were very juiced to anticipate the volatility that NVIDIA would bring after market closes. So I did not trade SPY at all. And I did not trade QQQ at all either. And right now on my chart, I know it looks kind of a little weird, but what I have right now are the Bollinger Bands and the volume profile. And that's about it. And so, strictly speaking, looking at the price action, the wicks, the fake outs, the fake breaks didn't work at all. Looking at Tesla, this was an interesting one. Overnight, last night, it looked very strong. Even into close yesterday, we saw a rip higher into close and held there. And when market opened today, it actually showed a little bit of strength for the first 5 minutes and then gave back everything overnight. And into close, obviously, we dumped even further. And so Tesla couldn't hold a 350 level. And if we test that 350 level tomorrow or end of the week this week, I think next week it will test the 358 level and to the 360s. So that's a close one to watch. But for now, looking at the daily charts, it looks like it may not make it there. And if it does, perhaps in the daily, how I like to trade on these types of uh, tickers is that when I play options, I look at the daily just to see if it's on the extreme ends of the Bollinger Band or either upper Bollinger or the lower Bollinger Band, and also look at the volume as well. And you could see that the volume that we brought in today wasn't very high compared to the last 3 days of green. And so, if Tesla does push higher into the end of the week and tests 360, we may fall outside the Bollinger Band. And if we break above 350 and test that 360 level or 368 level, it will bring a pretty high volume bar. And I know a lot of people don't like shorting the market, but I think knowing Tesla and knowing how it can react, it's very sensitive to a lot of things, not geopolitically, but politically. Politically, um, any type of news will trigger some sort of sell. And so looking at perhaps an extreme candle that will print a shooting star pattern with an increased volume may warrant a potential short back to the middle line of the Bollinger or even the lower end of the Bollinger. I think that thesis may be aligned with the overall market narrative. A lot of people in this market is expecting a pullback, and we're expecting a deep one. But my guess is that I don't think the market is ready for a deep pullback yet. Looking at the price action, and also looking at the skew index, is that not a lot of people are hedging and the hedges for the out the money puts are not very expensive. I think when we reach that skew index to extreme levels like 180, that is perhaps when the market will look for a turn. Like I mentioned, maybe a 3 to 4% couple of days, 2 to 3 weeks kind of waterfall. But right now, any dips that you see may actually be a buy the dip opportunity. We are going to, or I'm not saying going to, but I'm guessing that we may see a couple of more new all-time highs be printed in the next couple of days. QQQ has a lot of work to be done to get up back over to new all-time highs, the 583 level. And the only types of stocks that are sort of lagging or selling off and haven't recovered fully yet are, of course, Palantir, which sold off 20% since the August 13 days. Um, it sort of tried to recover but couldn't hold. I was playing options last week, and when I saw some strength, I definitely sold into that. And again, looking at the price action, we saw that huge sell-off on from August 13th all the way down to August 20th. And like I mentioned earlier, the way I like playing these options is looking at the extremes of the Bollinger Band. If it creates some sort of wick, if it was a lot of buying pressure and it prints a shooting star pattern, or if it's a selling pressure that prints a hammer with increased volume compared to the other days, that's when I look to enter. And I entered right around here the next day when it closed above the previous hammer's high. And so that's when I entered and pretty much sold it on Friday when Jackson Hole announced, perhaps when Jay Powell announced in Jackson Hole that there may be a potential cut in September. So that's when I made my gains. And since then, I haven't made any other plays except for today. And so, like I mentioned, QQQ has a lot of room to the upside to play catch up on. And it's like tickers like Palantir, Coin, Coin isn't quite ready yet. I wouldn't play any of this. This is all chop on a daily. The next one is Microsoft. Microsoft is very interesting. Microsoft had about a month of selling from after its earnings report. And you could see that it did fall outside the Bollinger Band, but it just kept selling and selling and selling. And what I like about a potential bounce play for this is that it did print a hammer candle yesterday with an increased volume bar, not as much as the following earnings day candle volume bar, of course, but it was pretty high. So looking at today's close, that's when I decided to enter the next week's expiry 517.5 calls for 1.9. And I believe this may actually push back up to the 50% retracement. If I'm lucky, maybe the 6.18. But I think if I see any strength in buying, I am going to sell. It may just even be near or at the money. I'm going to sell. In this market right now, a lot of people are very complacent, not sure what to do. So any buying pressure, or I'm going to sell into strength. So that is the only play that I kind of like out of these tech stocks. And if Microsoft can play game, if Palantir can play game, if Bitcoin rallies, perhaps QQQ may make a new all-time high shortly. Perhaps maybe may take may take some sort of catalyst. It could be the economics data coming out tomorrow. We have GDP and also the jobs report tomorrow pre-market at 8:30. We also have core PCE on Friday pre-market. And so perhaps these reports, these datas may actually help push some of these stocks higher into the end of the week and perhaps continue that momentum to the early days of next week. And now the only conviction or the only data point that I'm kind of banking on this buy the dip strength is that skew hasn't met, or I mean, the skew index hasn't gotten to the level where people are getting very cautious. Any points above the 150 may proceed with caution, but we're not at the extreme levels yet to warrant any shorts. And so the market may just chug along and keep pushing and grinding to new all-time highs. And perhaps maybe there may be days where you'll have a couple of red days for like a 1% drop. So I'm still in the camp of buy the dip moment. There are a lot of stocks that need to play catch up, and I believe we'll actually finish August very strong. I know NVDA after market was pretty brutal. It dropped about 2.5%, but we are still hanging on. I know that right now it's past 8:30, so right now NVIDIA is at 176, down 3% or 5 points. Microsoft is pretty much flat, 506.7 level. So I think a lot of people did risk off after markets, but at the same time, there are willing buyers to support this market as well. I don't see a major sell-off. Maybe perhaps at open tomorrow, we might see a little bit of a sell-off, but I think we may recover pretty quickly. And maybe that could warrant a buy the dip moment as well. Get your positions relatively cheap. But I also would caution to keep the position size pretty small going into the rest of the week if you're playing the weeklies. Um, and so, yeah, that's my anticipation. We'll see what tomorrow brings before market, and we'll see how price action um, starts off the market tomorrow at open. So thank you once again, and I will report in the next video.